2010 meeting of the Committee on Agency Operations for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Let's see. All members of the committee are present with the exception of Wallace Hall, who is absent today. Moving into the agenda, the first action item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the October 28th Agency Operations Committee meeting. Are there any questions or corrections? There being none, may I have a motion?
Move to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, and I'd like to take something out of order unless anyone takes issue with that. Otherwise, we will take out of order 5A, discussion of statement on auditing standards number 114, auditors' communication with those charged with governance. This will be presented by KPMG. Ms. Susan Warner, partner, is here. And I believe there is a handout, a spiral-bound handout. Thank you. Would you like to? I'm sorry, Dr. Alonzo, would you like to make some introductory remarks?
Well, just as a matter of background and real quick, I won't take much. This is as most everybody knows, the board has contracted with KPMG as our external auditor to audit our financial statements. This will be the fourth year that they do this. This is for FY09. And the statement on auditing standard 114 requires that the auditors come before the governing board and present their scope of work, their timing, and of course be able to answer any questions that, or be available to answer any questions that any board member may have. This is not, as I got a call early on, is there a problem that we're bringing in the auditors so quickly? There is not a problem yet. This is simply a requirement that they have to present this and communicate with the governing board. So with that, Susan, did I characterize that correctly?
Yes, sir. I think everybody has one of these now, hopefully. As Dr. Alonzo mentioned, this is the planning meeting for the 2009 audit. Very similar to last year, but there are some standards in place that do require us to come and tell you what we're going to do, what planning we've done, and to get your input into that process. So I'll walk you through kind of the background first, and then at the end there's a bunch of questions I'll ask you, and you can provide your input, any other questions you might have. You can see the agenda on page 2. We will talk about what you have hired KPMG to do. We'll talk about the audit overview, which includes the scope, the team, how we do our audit. And other planning considerations is where we have the brainstorming slide of getting input from you in the audit process. And then the last slide is really kind of after the audit, we come back to you and we give you another deliverable and just reminding you what that is. Okay. Page 3. Our responsibilities under generally accepted accounting standards. You have hired us to form an opinion on the financial statements which have been prepared by management with the oversight of the AOC to make sure they're material in all respects in accordance with GAAP. We do this by planning the audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that things are materially correct. And we'll talk about materiality in a minute and what that means. And then the last bullet is we do look at internal control, but everybody kind of asks, well, what kind of controls do you look at? So we really focus on the internal controls over the financial reporting process. There are many, many controls here at the agency, but we focus in on the ones related to the financial statements. And we don't give you an opinion on that like you do in the SEC world. If we have recommendations or things that we see that could be better, we'd issue a management letter and offer some opportunities for improvement. But the opinion is on the financial statements as a whole. Okay. Page 4. Like I said, we do report back to the AOC and, of course, management. Anything in our professional judgment we see as what I'll refer to as a gap in the control process to let you know in your oversight capabilities what those are so you can incorporate them into your process. If for some reason you were to issue KPMG's audited financial statements in some other type of document, most people would do that in like a glossy annual report or something like that. We are required by standards to look at that document to make sure you're not misrepresenting our work. So this is a reminder, if you choose to do that, we would need to be involved in that process. And of course, the last bullet, I think everybody's aware of it, but the standards do require me to remind you that the audit does not relieve you of your responsibilities. Page 5, exact scope of the audit. It is a financial statement audit for 2009. We will do it under generally accepted accounting principles and government auditing standards. As I mentioned, if we have a management letter, that would be a second deliverable. And of course, the SAS 114 communication is what we're doing today. That takes us to slide 6. This is just a reminder of your team members. Myself as audit partner. Dee was here last year to present the results of the audit. She is a concurring partner. Rebecca and Suba have been the managers on the engagement for 3 or 4 years. And then we do have a tax person who looks at the nonprofit tax issues, or governmental tax issues. We also work with R. Mendoza as part of our historically underutilized business assistance program. And then, of course, your internal audit staff, led by Tony Tegby, contributes 200 hours to our audit process for 2 reasons. One, the institutional knowledge he can add to our team, and secondly, to reduce the cost of the audit. The team is consistent with prior year. Slide 7. Materiality, what it is and what it's not. It is a professional standard that we look at materiality when we determine how we're going to do the audit work, the nature of the time and the extent of the testing. The way I like to look at materiality is if something were missing from the financial statement, a reader who would read the financial statements, it would affect their decision process. And so it is a number calculation we come up with based on a lot of variety of qualitative and quantitative aspects, and it does change every year depending upon the environment. But it's just kind of a measure of, I guess, how many samples we choose and things like that. And of course, it is a matter of our professional judgment. Slide 8, an overview of the audit process, planning, which includes today. Obviously, we look at internal controls. There's a lot of system work there. We look at Charter Helms and some of the GL account systems. Also manual controls, reconciliations, supervisory reviews that we would take a look at. So standard testing involves picking samples, making sure the process is working right, analytical procedures, reconciliations, things like that over significant account balances. And of course, completion of the audit would be including the reporting process and coming back to the board to present the results. Slide 9 is a little bit more detail of a timeline that we've worked out with management. The IT work will start sometime in March. Most of the audit will be done in April. It'll wrap up in May and June, and then I have got the July AOC meeting reserved in my calendar to come back and present the results. Slide 10, a little bit about SAS 99, or fraud, if you will, fraud in regard to the audit. There are many kinds of fraud. There are 2 that this auditing standards require us to focus on. Those are fraud of financial reporting and misappropriation of assets. So those are the 2 primary focuses that we have from an audit procedure. We are required to design audit tests to look at the controls you have in place with regard to those 2 aspects to see that they're designed properly and effective. And of course, if we see any fraud during the audit, we are required obviously to report that to you. And this just kind of tells you kind of the little matrix of how we do that. We look at tone at the top, the attitudes, opportunities, and of course we do ask the obvious questions of has there been any during the year or any allegations of such. Slide 11. This is kind of the main summary slide of where the audit will focus. Basically, these are these significant accounts that have been determined. Obviously, the student loans and all the related interest balances and income balances, which will involve the Charter Helm system. The valuation of debt and all the debt compliance procedures that go with that, making sure you're compliant with your covenants. The appropriations and the grant revenues coming in, have we recorded those properly? Do we have proper cutoff? And then the expenses of going out, which obviously is the payments to most universities for the financial assistance. Again, have we properly recorded those in the right audit period? Are they accurate to reflect the cash that has left the institution? In the middle box, non-routine transactions. There can be new accounting pronouncements that need to be implemented. There are none for 2009. That's good. There will be some for 2010, but there is nothing for 2009. We also look at any potential commitments or contingencies you might have. This would involve working with lawyers, litigation, things like that, anything that we disclose in the financial statements that might be a little bit unusual. And of course, we're still, as auditors, dealing with the economic impact and what's going on in the environment in relation to the financial statements. Yes, Fred?
So Susan, I guess the contingent liabilities would include the responsibility for the ARA funds?
It would, yes. also look at that too. Just to make sure everybody's clear on that, there are no ARA funds flowing through the 2009 financial statements, no expenditures being recorded in 2009. Those are actually all going to be 2010 transactions, but there would be probably some disclosures in the financial statements letting you know that you've received those funds and are responsible for them. Yes. And I think I've already mentioned the IT piece. We do bring our IT auditors in, look at the general control environment, which primarily looks at physical access, change management controls, operations batching, and then application level controls, which are all your edit checks that are in your computer systems to make sure the loans are processing correctly. That takes us to slide 12. This is where we're required to ask you some questions just to make sure how things in 2009, if they're any different from 2008, or any additional thoughts you might have. But one of the first questions we'd like to look at is, have the allocations of responsibilities between the AOC and management changed from 2008?
Not that I'm aware of.
We are not either, so I just wanted to confirm that with you. All right, any particular objectives, strategies, or business risks from your perspective that you think basically create a material misstatement opportunity in the financial statements? Other than
Not that I'm
ARA,
aware of.
obviously, that's next year.
I'm sorry?
I mean, I know we have ARA, but that's, or
Right,
stimulus,
right,
but that's
right.
2010.
Right.
Any matters that the AOC would consider would warrant some particular extra attention during the audit? Anything that you've had to discuss in detail, control issues you have concerns about, large transactions, unroutine transactions, anything of that nature?
Not that I'm aware of, and based on, prior management letters and audit adjustments, nothing popped out to me. Are you,
Yeah, it has not. Most of those situations were already addressed and have been
Okay.
corrected.
all right?
Any significant communication with regulators, Department of Ed, IRS, anything like that?
Federal government?
Okay.
No.
All right. I like those words.
When is a regulator a regulator? We did have the does the peer
Peer
review
review?
rise to that?
We do look at that, so thank you for reminding me about that. What is the AOC's perspective on the risk of fraud? Again, we're talking about financial statements and misuse of assets. Do you have any particular concerns about fraud risk that the agency doesn't already have identified and have controls in place?
Well, as a board member, you always have concerns about risk of fraud and
Granted.
theft and misuse. Is there anything in particular that's
In particular,
come to
do you have-
anyone's attention? Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And the last one is just kind of a catch-all, but anything else that you can think of in your governing body role that we would need to know as auditors to incorporate into the 2009 audit process?
Other than the ARA, which is what we've already talked about. But I'd like Dr. Alonso to ask you if you concur with all of our answers, or if there is anything on any of these points you'd like to bring up.
Yeah, there's nothing that I think the answers were given as I would have given them.
All right.
All right?
Takes us to slide 13. This is just a reminder of when the audit is finished, when we come back in July. These will be some of the things that we are required to report to you about the results of the audit. We are required to let you know about the qualitative aspects of the accounting practices. In other words, if there's any policies or procedures that have been changed in how accounting transactions are accounted for, we will bring that to your attention. If we've got any significant difficulties, any audit adjustments, any disagreements with management, those would all be discussed with you. And by the way, you would hear about them way before July if those were to happen. Any significant other findings that would rise to a level that we think would affect your ability to oversee the agency. Representations, like the representation letter, management does sign that, and we do provide you to that at the end of the audit, just so you know what they did represent back to the audit team. So it's kind of just a summary of the audit results that we'll present to you in July. Particular questions for me? I mean, this is pretty similar to last year, and I think all of you are very familiar with the process, but.
Questions for Ms. Warren?
All right, well then I appreciate your time today, and we look forward to a 2009 audit process.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is an informational item. No action is required, so we will move on. Let's see, to Roman numeral 3, Deputy Commissioner's Report. I would like to call on Dr. Alonso to introduce the topics for this meeting. There are 3 topics. They are all informational only. One is the ARA report, 2 is a report on loan programs, and the third one is the standard quarterly financial report. Dr. Alonso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As noted, this is a standing item on the AOC committee where we give a report called the Deputy Commissioner's Report. Today, as the Chair has indicated, it is broken up into three distinct reports. The AURA, a report on AURA, a report on our loan programs, and then a report on our financial report, a report on our finances, which really will consist of two subjects, two tiers, if you will. The quarterly financials that we present to the board every quarter, and to give you an update of the latest development on the request by the state leadership on the 5% reduction, just going to bring you up to where we are with that. I would like to call on Mr. Dan Weaver, Patrick Kershaw, and our bond counsel, Tim Dodloff, who are here to present a short presentation on our student loan programs, and then we will move on to the next one. So, Dan?
Just remind the members that student loan information is on page 12 of their... Yeah, okay.
Madam Chair, I think that because there were some new board members and new committee members, can you hear me all right?
No.
Yeah, not so much. Put together essentially a kind of an overview or a broad stroke of the loan programs that we manage within the coordinating board. As we were putting together the outline for this particular for this presentation, we felt like it was important for the AOC members to be able to hear from your bond counsel, specifically on the statutory authority that we operate the loan program under, and to kind of talk through the flow of funds and how that is structured within the statute of the state. So organizationally, we're going to let Tim Dodloff from Vincent Elkins go through the first 4 or 5 slides to go through more from a legalistic perspective, and then we're going to shift into more of a operational discussion at the end. Feel free to ask questions along the way. We'll make this as long or as short as you would like to make it, and with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon. If you'll go to the next slide, please.
Next slide.
Next one. Thank you. Basically, as a governmental entity, you can't do anything unless you have authority to do it, very much unlike corporations. In connection with issuing bonds, you issue bonds to finance your loan program, and you are fortunate to have general obligation bond authority in the Texas Constitution. And that authority is granted by the voters of the state. And what the general obligation pledge means is your bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the state of Texas. If you'll go to the next, please. Next one, please. And I passed out, kind of as an example, or for those of you that are history buffs, an excerpt from the Victoria Advocate dated April the 7th, 1965. Your loan program has been in existence since 1965, which is when the first constitutional amendment was approved by the voters of the state. And I believe that first authorization was for $85 million in student loan bonds. If you go to the next one, please. And since that time, you have obtained an aggregate of $1.86 billion in authorization. And typically how that has worked is each time the voters approve an amendment, they'll approve a finite amount of general obligation bond authority. As you run through that or utilize it, you've typically gone back to the voters to get another amendment to authorize additional bonds. Go to the next one, too. Currently, you have about $525 million in GO authority remaining. And if you recall, at a prior board meeting, you authorized the issuance of another $125 million which we're getting ready to issue next month or the beginning of March, which is anticipated to be at about $125 million principal amount. So after we issue those bonds, you'll have $400 million remaining. And, you know, back when the first constitutional amendment was adopted, the legislatures enacted the Hinson-Hazelwood College Student Loan Act, which is now codified as Chapter 52 of the Texas Education Code. If you want to take the time to read the article, it gives a little background of the sponsors of that bill, but that's why it's named the Hinson-Hazelwood Act. But your primary authority for issuing bonds is in the Constitution and in Chapter 52 of the Education Code. Now, even though your bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the state, they are designed to be self-supporting, and that's found in your statute. You've got a requirement to set the interest rates on your loans at a rate sufficient to pay all of your debt service on your outstanding bonds, as well as all or a part of the cost that it takes to run the program. Next one, please. Now, with every authority, there are limitations. The first limitation we've already covered. You've got to have GO bond authority in order to issue your bonds. By statute, you can only issue $125 million in new money bonds in any state fiscal year. Next one. And I've included a couple other limitations on this slide that pertain to the fact that your bonds are issued as tax-exempt obligations, meaning the interest that you pay on those bonds to your bondholders is generally excludable from that bondholder's income for federal income tax purposes. And one of the main limitations that's derived from the fact that your bonds are tax exempt is they are viewed as private activity bonds, which means that you've got to go to the Texas Bond Review Board every year to get an allocation of that private activity bond reservation. Generally, you're limited to obtaining $75 million, which you're pretty much guaranteed to get in the manner in which the state allocates the private activity bond allocation. And it's possible to obtain another $50 million after September the 1st of each year. This is actually, I believe, the first time that the coordinating board is issuing more than $75 million in new money bonds in any fiscal year. And just to point out, kind of the way the allocation process in the state works is after August 15th, whatever allocation isn't used by other issuers gets dropped into one bucket and then becomes available on a first-come, first-served basis. And you were able to obtain another $50 million last fall from the last program year, and that's how you were able to get $125 million. But that extra $50 million may not be around in future years. Also, under the Federal Income Tax Code, and this kind of, while there are a number of limitations and restrictions that you have to adhere to in order for your bonds to be tax exempt, I chose to put this one on the slide because I think it illustrates kind of the market for your loans, at least for your state program loans. Under the Federal Income Tax Code, the amount of your state program loans cannot exceed the difference between a student's cost of attendance and other types of financial aid that they're otherwise eligible to receive. In other words, what that means is a student has to first try to finance its education by obtaining certain types of federal loans. So the state loans that the coordinating board typically makes are designed to bridge that gap between a student's cost of attendance and what the feds are able to loan them. Now, there is a limitation in Chapter 52 that I think came about just a few years ago before there were some major changes made to certain federal loan programs that was designed to, I guess, provide an incentive for the coordinating board to not make any federal loans, but rather to focus on state program loans. And this statute pretty much limits your ability to make federal loans only to students who have or will be receiving a state program loan. but the statute does have an exception that if market conditions warrant, the commissioner can override that limitation. Now, this next slide kind of builds on itself, and we actually made a similar presentation to the AOC back in 2006, so some of you may remember it if you were here at that time. The purpose for this is to illustrate you have three main funds in the state treasury created either by the Constitution or statute, and hopefully after the end of this you'll understand kind of the flow of funds. As we discussed earlier, you start out with having GO bond authority. Right now you have $525 million remaining. The first step in the process is you sell your bonds to the market, and in return for selling your bonds you get the sale proceeds. In the next step, you take those sale proceeds and you loan them out to the students, and in return for that loan the students pay them back over time. And I like to visualize the process as filling up different buckets. And when the loan repayments come in, they first have to go into the interest and sinking fund, which we call the INS fund. But you've got to fill up that bucket before you can do anything else with those loan repayments. And it's designed so that you start out every fiscal year, September 1st, with a full bucket. Then the next dollar that comes in the door on September the 1st, you start accumulating what you need for the following state fiscal year. And that money can only be used to pay debt service. And that INS fund secures all of your outstanding bonds on a parity of lien basis. Next one. Now, you saw from a previous slide that your loan program is designed to be self-supporting. You've got to use some of your loan repayments to pay your admin costs. Well, once you fill up the INS fund bucket, the excess monies that relate to loans that were made out of the Texas Opportunity Plan Fund, or otherwise known as the TOP Fund, go into the TOP Fund bucket, and they can be used to make additional student loans, pay your admin costs, or for any lawful purpose related to the loan program. And as you can see, the funds are designed for all of the money that has to stay in the loan program. And so you do end up using some of that money to recycle it to go back to the students yet again in the form of loans. And then finally, the legislature set up another fund in 1991 called the Student Loan Auxiliary Fund. And all that means is the excess loan repayments that are coming in the door from loans made after 1992 or from certain funds instead go in the auxiliary fund. And those monies are essentially can be used for the same purposes as the TOP fund monies. Make additional student loans, pay admin costs, or any other lawful purpose related to the loan program. The only difference really is those excess loan repayments in the auxiliary fund can also be used to make beyond time loans. That concludes, I believe, my part of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions now, or we'll be sticking around to the end to answer any questions then as well.
Okay, let's
So
keep going. Oh.
presumably the top fund bucket will eventually empty out.
Well, actually, it's designed kind of, I think it would have made this model a little too confusing if I had done it this way, but actually your bond proceeds on sale go into, right now, the auxiliary fund. Then they're loaned out of that fund. It's kind of as a holding place. The same held true back when you didn't have the auxiliary fund, when you just had the TOP fund. You still separately track all the loans that you ever made out of the TOP fund, which were out of proceeds from bonds issued prior to 1992. So even though those bonds are no longer outstanding, you still continually track those loans to the TOP fund. So you do have a portfolio of loans that are receivables to the TOP fund and a portfolio of loans that are receivables to the auxiliary fund.
Sorry I asked.
It's all right.
So we're gonna shift gears real quickly, and the next slide is kind of a summary of what Tim just covered, and then I'm going to ask a couple of our folks that are in our loan program operations group to come up, so that if you have any specific questions, with the rest of the presentation, we'll have the expertise at the table that we can go through that. I guess I just wanted to make a couple of highlights. Thanks, Tim. One, the loan program has been self-supporting since its inception, so we've never had to draw on state funds. I think that's a real critical piece for the board to kind of take home with you today. Another point that Tim made, after we issue our $125 million this year, we will only have $400 million of cap remaining. In order to get additional cap, it has to go to a vote through, and I think our last vote was in 2007 with Proposition 2. So as we enter in the next legislative session, you know, our cap is starting to shrink as we get closer towards 2011. 2012, so it's something that we need to make sure we keep on the front of our radar. There's an AMT holiday that goes through the rest of FY10. Our bonds for 2009, 2010 are exempt from AMT, which means practically we get a lower rate on our bonds. We don't know if that's going to continue into 2011. Another reason why we tried to accelerate our bond issuance this year is to take advantage of that particular holiday. Next slide. So I'm going to ask, we've been reorganizing the loan program area for the last couple of years, and after much of the dust has settled, we have ended up with two directors in our operations group, Janie Miramontes, who's our Director of Client Services, and Kyle Kelly, who's our Director of Support Services. Janie primarily is I like to use a NASCAR analogy. Janie is the driver and has all the drivers of the cars out on the track. Kyle is the pit crew to make sure that those drivers are on the track and not in the pit. So between the two of them, I think we have the expertise to answer any kind of operational questions. And then I'm going to kind of go through real quickly what our primary focus is from a state program basis. Okay. So primarily we make college access loans. I'm on to the next slide now. Right now it's the largest portfolio of loans. It's about 78% of our portfolio. We also make a small percentage of help loans, which are really, I'm sorry, am I?
No, the slide's one too far.
Go back.
One back.
There you go.
Yeah.
So our two big programs are Cal and Help. Our biggest program is Cal, which is where we tend to focus most of our time, and most of our presentation really is kind of geared around that alternative loan. They currently both have a 6% fixed rate. We do have a variable Cal loan product. It's been in existence for 4 or 5 years now. It didn't get a very good start. We had other competitive products that had low interest rates also, so it never really caught on very well. We're looking at possibly phasing it out at some point in time in the future. We service our loans until they're paid in full, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on a subsequent slide on that. And something that the coordinating board does that nobody else in the industry does is we do not capitalize interest, accrued interest to students. Most loan products, when a student exits school and enters into repayment, that amount of interest that's been accrued to that account rolls into principal. And then the repayment schedule is based on that principal plus interest balance. We never capitalize the interest as a borrower benefit, because in the long run, the borrowers pay less interest to the coordinating board as a result of not capitalizing the interest when they enter into repayment. So it's a little bit of a long-winded answer. Beyond Time is our other primary state loan program. It originally started with refunding proceeds from our normal Hinson Hazelwood, from our normal bond-funded program. It is currently funded out of general revenue funds and tuition set-aside funds that come from students that pay tuition at public four-year institutions. It's a 0% forgivable loan. There is an origination fee that is charged to the borrower in order to operate the Beyond Time program, and that's incorporated within our operating funds within the loan program group. Question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask how these origination fees are set on both loan programs, or all three loan programs. 3 to 5% seems kind of high.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
You know, the short answer is not really. It depends. I think that's the accountant's short answer. You know, the loan program lives on the margin that we charge to borrowers and our origination fees. Our last bond issue, our true interest cost was 4.44, and we make loans at 6%. So we have a really, really tight margin on how we fund the program. So literally, the funding of the operation of the program resides mostly in origination fees, because our objective from a board perspective is to charge the very lowest interest rate we possibly can. And it's not uncommon for other alternative loans to have origination fees that range from 3 to 5 to 7 to 9%, with interest rates that run from 7.25 through 10, 11, 12, 13%. So we feel like we're still a really, you know, from a best value perspective, from a student's view, we are still we're the best deal on the street, for lack of a better word. So if you want to tweak the origination fees because they're too high, you're going to have to ooch up your interest rate on the top end. So it's a trade-off.
Well, yeah, bingo. Trade-off is that answers the question.
I'm sorry it took so long to get there. Next slide. The next the next two slides actually are a couple, 3 slides, are just some pie charts to give you some perspective of what our current portfolio looks like. 77% are interest-bearing loans that we make to students, and then 13% are beyond time. So roughly 90% of our outstanding portfolio balance are state loans. We have a very small federal portfolio, and then we have about $66 million of principal that are loans that have passed into a judgment status, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to the end of the presentation.
Oh, wait, I had a question. So
Sure.
I'm looking at the old slide, let's see.
The 52?
6 and then okay, it answers another question I had on the financial reports.
Yes,
so-
that's correct.
Okay,
And we can talk about that when we get there if you'd like to.
okay, thank you.
The next slide is, in and of itself, it tells you where our portfolio is from a repayment perspective and how many loans we have in school. And if we compared this particular pie chart to where we were on 12/31 of 2007 to see if our portfolio had aged or had shifted, or if we had more loans in school, that it might affect our repayment stream or vice versa. And literally, our portfolio today looks very much like it did in 2007. So our proportion of in-school versus repayment and deferment is roughly identical. What that tells me from an operations standpoint is that the loan program's been in existence for a very long time. We are very much in a steady state situation. We have borrowers that finish repayment, we have proceeds to make more loans, and it's very much a mature process, so you wouldn't expect to have a lot of variations between where the students are in the pipeline. How we allocate funds, it's a bit of an art. Next slide, please. We're currently roughly about 50-50 between public four-year institutions and the independent colleges and universities. The medical schools primarily live on the HELP product, although they do have access to make Cal loans as well. The junior colleges and community colleges are particularly loan averse, and we particularly want them to be loan averse, so that's not a particular target area for alternative loans. We do make some loans to alternative teacher certification centers, and I think that that's been growing a little bit over the years, depending on how much money we have to allocate.
Dan, quick question on the slide before last was deferment. Are those loans that are eventually be collected, or are those loans like Be on Time that are in the process of being forgiven?
Eventually, they will all be collected. I think there's probably some beyond times in deferment. You might want to just make a comment about what deferment means.
Deferment is just a postponement of payments during a statutory period of time. Most of the deferments that we grant are in-school deferments. Some are discretionary forbearances that we grant based on financial hardship also. So those are the two parts.
Well, that's, since we have a large slice of the pie that's in school, that's why I was curious how deferments were differentiated.
I think in that slide, are they both? is it all
So
linked together?
deferments would have been somebody that had gone into repayment and had gone out of repayment. So they may have an in-school deferment. This is kind of the granularity of the data that we get out of Helm. I think this is, I can be in deferment and be in school and have an in-school deferment, but I'm in the deferment bucket. I'm not in the in-school bucket.
This is after they've already left school for more than a period of 6 months. They've already lost their grace period, so now they're in a deferment status. Interim would be when...
So basically, it's a pipeline. You go from in-school to a 6-month grace period to deferment if you're not repaid.
Correct.
But in this pie chart, there is a grace piece of the pie. So literally, the students that have transitioned out of school into repayment are captured in the grace piece. I don't want to make any religious overtones about that, but
Semi-understand.
so this next slide is really just to give you kind of context and framework. Our operating division is segregated into two groups. Client services, again, which are primarily our troops on the ground, the people that interact with borrowers or with institutions more frequently. We have a customer service call center that's within this group, the loan origination group, the payments group. These are really the folks that kind of run day-to-day operations that interface with the public. And then the support services are more, and I may describe support services on the next slide better than I'm going to on this particular slide. Hang on a second. So I've segregated the indirect loan program, but there's two components of indirect that really, for argument's sake, are really truly direct because they exist to directly support the loan program operation as opposed to indirect, which are truly indirect, like facilities or general accounting or phone services or whatever.
Let me just go back to the direct. I'm sorry, you have 47 FTEs in client services and 21 in support services, 68 FTEs. This agency is authorized for how many FTEs?
Total,
Yeah.
311.
So that's a big number. I just wanted to point that out. This is 68 out of 311.
311.
Okay.
Correct, good point. So within the ITS, we pay for the Helm application, which runs our loan program, and then Business and Support Services has certain accounting and finance staff that are really dedicated towards making the loan program operate. So I wanted to give you just a differentiation that although they're paid out of the indirect strategy, they really truly exist to support the loan program, and that's how we fund those particular operations within our budgeting process. Okay, thank you, Mary Lou. I'm not going to go through this whole life of the loan. I think probably for my context, I was hoping that the article that Mr. Dytloff dropped off might have mentioned the borrower that got a loan in 1965 because there's a good chance we're still collecting on that loan that was made in 1965. The student loan business is a long duration process. Students can get a loan when they're entering freshmen, if they're on the 7-year program or the 6-year program, and hopefully with the coordinating board's help, they're on the 4-year program. But they're in school for a long period of time, and the repayment periods typically run between 10 and 20 years. So literally when we make a first loan to a freshman, entering freshman, we are entering into a relationship that could last up to 30 years. So from an operational perspective, it's good to get your head around the fact that we're in this very, very long-term commitment with the students that we impact. If you have any specific questions on this, feel free to ask, and Janie and Kyle can give me to shut up and get a word in edgewise. I do want to point out at the bottom, we entered into an interagency agreement with the Attorney General's office where we further clarified the role and relationship that the coordinating board has with the Attorney General's office and how we collect on our defaulted loans. So that's been in place for about 3 months now. We're starting to find some of the fine-tuning places of where the logical drop-offs are from how we interact with borrowers. But I think we're finding that in the long run, that's going to pay off from a operation, from a financial part of the operation, as well as how we interact with those particular borrowers. And then the last slide, and maybe a little personal bias on this, the state benefits greatly from having a very robust alternative loan program. As you discuss financial aid opportunities that the coordinating board has before you, the last piece of the puzzle tends to be what's that last bit of loan product that's going to allow a student to either enroll or continue in higher education. So it's been a critical piece of the coordinating board since 1965. In 2008, in our financial aid database, the total loan volume for alternative loans for these financially needy students was about $250 million. Our target for next year is $125 million. So the coordinating board makes up a very large percentage of the alternative loan market. I would put forward that it's important for the board to craft strategies to cover the entire amount of alternative loans that's available to students so that they're not subject to predatory lending practices, all the bad news that you hear in the paper about the student loan market. And I guess the last bullet point, with our Helm integration in 2007 and the organizational changes we made over the last couple of years, the loan program really is kind of poised for substantial growth if we feel like it's worthwhile and advantageous for the state to grow. And we're in a very stable position right now to make that happen. So I think we have from a board perspective many options in the future. And that's about all I had. Questions?
Elaine?
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Arturo?
Thank you very much.
Dr. Arturo. Dr. Alonso.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dan, Janie, Kyle, Patrick, and Tim. Our next report is on a term that you have heard me talk about almost probably to the point of nausea since August 28th, and that is our report on the ARA funds that we're administering. I'm going to be calling Dan Griffith and Mark Zafiro up to the table to make this presentation. Mark is no stranger to the board. He has been around here for a long time. But I would like to introduce Mr. Dan Griffith, our new director of ARA programs. Dan joined the coordinating board on November 5th, and I think I can say without any reservations that he has not had a moment to even catch his breath since coming on board. Dan is a highly qualified individual with federal funds experience, higher education experience, and ARA-specific experience that he brings to us. He will take us through the process that has, very briefly, that has gotten us to where we are. They will both be available, as I will, to answer any questions. So without any further delay, I'll turn it over to Dan Griffith and Mark Zafiro for a short presentation. Dan?
Thanks, Dr. Alonso. And good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Dan Griffith, Director of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act Grants Program here at the Coordinating Board. We appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an overview of our program operations, some background, and then the status of that program to date. The Coordinating Board manages the prime award from the U.S. Department of Education for the Government Services Fund. We support our P-16 division with their Stimulus AmeriCorps project, as well as providing technical assistance as needed to the foundation here at the Coordinating Board for the stimulus portion of their VISTA program. This slide provides a historical overview of the Government Services Fund. The Coordinating Board was delegated administrative responsibility by the Governor's Office in late August of 2009, and quickly but purposefully, we've stood up the program and began awarding funds to our subrecipients in December, with the majority of those grants, the remaining of those grants, being executed this month. The AmeriCorps project is funded with stimulus dollars and is primarily managed by the P16 division. Our grants team supports Dr. Laredo's staff by maintaining an external website for subrecipient reporting and providing data quality reviews and incoming reports and reimbursement requests. This slide provides an overview of our grants program operations. Reporting to both federal and state agencies is an important component of the transparency and accountability required of ARA programs. Additionally, our weekly meetings with the ARA group here at the Coordinating Board and with the Governor's Stimulus group at the Capitol are critical to the dissemination of information from the government and communicating that data to recipients and administrators. The period of performance for the Government Service Fund program is 2 years. But we expect our subrecipients to burn approximately 80% of the $723 million by the end of this calendar year. Our response to this sort of timeline is to outsource our administrative staffing through temp services. Our subrecipient monitoring of project activities will also be a key compliance effort. In addition to our own prepayment desk reviews and other external audits, we are requesting AOC approval to proceed with a competitive RFP to outsource on-site monitoring by a qualified firm. Finally, the Coordinating Board has committed extensive internal resources from the very beginning of the program. Mark Cifurio has provided invaluable expertise as the interim coordinator, and then he will continue to support on a limited basis with external relations and in very important communications with our stakeholders. The GSF program is funded with over $723 million in stimulus funds. This supports higher education and state agency operations and special projects as appropriated by the legislature. The TEA portion, or the Texas Education Agency portion, at $363 million is approximately 50% of the total program and will be expended this spring to purchase textbooks for the upcoming 2010 school year. A supplemental handout has been provided to the board staff. It reflects the details of the appropriated and awarded funds. It's this multicolored spreadsheet. This details the appropriations as they were laid out for formula, special funding, and incentives. It also is a document that we post to our website as a matter of communications to the outside public that shows the manner and the frequency of how we're making those awards to which institutions and for what. The GSF program has met several pre-award challenges that impacted our quick turnaround of awards in late 2009. But now that we've cleared those hurdles, we are in full implementation mode and moving forward. Of the 96 applications that we received in 2009, we have awarded 48 to date. And of the remaining 48 that you see on that table that are in work, a majority of those have been approved by the Coordinating Board and are currently at the subrecipient organizations for their final signatures. Finally, the support our grants team provides for the P16 Division's AmeriCorps project is focused on grants administration and reporting, primarily federal reporting. We are implementing a web-based portal for their subrecipient reporting this week, and we'll be working with the P16 and business services staff to accomplish the required reporting and reimbursement request activities from their subrecipients. Well, this concludes my presentation. Does the committee have any questions regarding the program?
It sounds like you've done quite a bit of work in a short amount of time,
Yes, ma'am.
so you're to be commended for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to
Yes,
just,
please.
if for a second, I don't think that we can underscore that point enough. It was quite a challenge. We promised institutions that we would get a website up in 30 days, and the applications develop, and the terms and conditions develop, and all the information by September 30th, October 1, I guess it was. And we did it. I mean, we worked through the night, but we had it ready on October 1. It was, and I'm not bragging. I'm bragging on my staff, because it was truly, you have heard, or you are seeing two of the people that have been very critical in this effort, but it really has been a team effort. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Dr. Gardner brought us up to this point even before I took it over, because he was attending weekly meetings, or twice weekly meetings, from the very beginning when the ARA funds were announced at the governor's office. But even after that, we had Susan Brown's division involved, we had the people in business services involved, we had the IT folks involved. I've often joked that Mark Zafiro happened to be the unlucky guy whose office is across from mine, and he's the first one that I saw when I walked out the door, and asked him if he would be the interim audit director. But I really don't want to make a joke out of it, because Mark responded, and he brought us up to the time when Dan joined the team. So it has truly been a team effort, and I really am pleased. And as I told the commissioner, I keep telling him, we are going to make this a successful program. We will be bringing an item here before you for your consideration on the outsourcing part of this work. But when all is said and done, if there are any problems with the institutions, it will not be because of lack of internal controls and because of lack of processes, because I am convinced that we are on the right path to being fully transparent and accountable for these funds.
Well, I want to thank you for that. You're singing my tune right there, and I appreciate that statement from you. My question is, are there any black clouds looming, any thunderstorms in terms of items that are out of our control that could potentially hinder our performance or our timeline we're trying to implement under this program?
Not to our knowledge right now. I think the expertise that our team brings to the field with regards to grants management, federal programs, our knowledge and working with universities and colleges here in the state, that really gives us a good position to be in, and more importantly, it's the communications that we establish with our clients or our customers. To be able to identify any problems at their end. We really are in a customer service mode and have been since the day I came aboard as far as being able to answer questions and so forth. So as long as we develop strong processes, things that and activities that we merge with the agency practices, then we should be able to carry forward. We have noticed the federal government's desire to change the rules occasionally, and those were some of the challenges that I spoke about that we faced last year. There were a lot of things like construction, salaries, reporting, things like that we identified in the early stage of our program that could have been barriers to getting the awards out and then to our subrecipients' performance. But we managed to work through those issues. In fact, the Department of Education on Christmas Eve issued guidance to auditors and recipients nationwide as a result of our queries here in the state of Texas asking for clarification on some various items. So as long as we stay ahead of that and work with both the federal government and our clients, I think we'll be in a good position to deal with any kind of hurdles that come up.
Madam Chair, if I may, again, quickly, I would not classify it as a dark cloud, but if I could, particular challenges to us is one of the things that the Article 12 appropriation contains is that there are some appropriations to other agencies that are not agencies or institutions of higher education. And I throw those in the category of challenging because we are dealing with agencies where we have no expertise whatsoever. They do, but we do not. For example, we are dealing with the Texas Historical Commission. We are dealing with the Texas Department of Agriculture, the Texas Commission on the Arts, and other agencies that we are not familiar with. But again, I feel that we, with our communication that Dan spoke about, we are working with them to try to get them to spend the funds in the most, well, in the way that is going to cause the least problems for them and for us. A lot of the construction projects that were appropriated by the legislature, ARPA funds bring with it a host of regulations over and above what we know. They have to comply with Davis-Bacon Act and Buy American Act, and the list goes on and on. And so we've been working with them to try to get them to, I think the word that we use is repurpose those funds within the context of the legislation to make sure that they run into as few challenges as possible. So again, thanks to Mark and the rest of the team, we've established a very good relationship with those agencies. Agencies that I never thought that we would be dealing with as a higher ed coordinating board.
Madam Chair, a quick question, and Mark, this goes back to some of our previous conversations. On the repurposing, have we run into anything that's caused us? I know we had some challenges at the early stage of it, but do we feel like we've got most of those now pretty well defined now?
Absolutely. The only thing that we really have out there that we're still working on with are some of these construction projects, repurpose those funds, and we're working very closely with the Governor's Office and LBB and the institutions that are going to repurpose. But right now, they're all basically green lights, and we have dealt with all the challenges, and I think we got our arms around them pretty good. I think it is important to mention that we have gotten a lot of support from the Governor's Office and also what I call the State Budget Leadership Offices, the Lieutenant Governor's Office, the Speaker's Office, and then also House Appropriations and Senate Finance. And they have been very, very helpful to us when we identified some problems that we had, and they did not want to repurpose the entire amount as we had outlined. They said that what we will do is we will make sure that you have assistance in any problems that come up, and they have backed us 100%, and we really appreciate that.
That's encouraging. The other question is, and I think, Dan, you had said that you expected 80% of these funds to be out by fiscal year end, I guess. Are we encountering any difficulties in the institutions completing the applications? I mean, because there's a lot of hoops that they've got to jump through, I know, to be able to have access to these funds. And are we providing those institutions, especially those institutions of higher education, support in terms of how to put those together?
Yes, to both of your questions. The first round of applications were due October the 30th, I think. And we received 96 applications from institutions. We went through and completed our reviews and started to award in December. On one of the slides, it showed that we anticipated about 18 applications in 2010. Those are the remaining, what we call Phase 2 institutions that, just didn't send anything in. So once we get all of our reporting and everything completed this week and next, in February we'll start to reach out to them. Actually, we have had a few come in. And we've updated our application package, streamlined that, and that's really a case-by-case, person-to-person phone call where we're working with them individually to make sure that they get their applications in. Our goal would be to have those completed February, March timeframe so that they can get on, with spending their money and starting their projects and so forth. So we want to accelerate that portion of it.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Quick clarification that,
yes, sir.
And this is. And I think I heard earlier that this is stimulus money, and that's available just this 1 year, or will it be available, or would there be monies available the next year?
The federal award to the state of Texas was for a 2-year period. So we're managing these funds. The period of performance starts October 1st, 2009, and goes through the end of the biennium of August 31 of 2011. So they essentially have a little bit less than 2 years to be able to spend these funds.
It really follows the state budget for the biennium.
Right, cycle.
The biennium ends August 31st, 2011. That's basically how long the institutions have to spend the funds.
I'd like to follow up on what Dennis had to say. Are there strings attached to this money anyway in shape? And one of the questions I've got, that's one question. The other is, back to Dennis's point, is this a leading investment? If we take this money, we make the investment, and 2 years later, we're going to have to start coughing it up out of our own treasury to continue to fund whatever these programs are that we put out there?
Well, I'll answer the first question as
Okay.
far as strings. Because of the transparency and accountability requirements of the administration when they enacted the ARA Act, there's quite a bit, there's a greater level of reporting requirements on top of just a normal federal grant award. So we have to stand up external websites. We have to develop reporting mechanisms that are secure and protect the information and the data that's coming in. And our subrecipients have to report to us monthly so that we manage not only the progress of the project, we can assist them with reimbursements. They have to report jobs created, jobs retained, and also vendor data and so forth. So there's a higher degree of reporting and accountability that we have to collect that data from our subrecipients and be able to report that not only back to the federal government, but the LBB has also implemented recently a quarterly report which is similar to, but in addition to, our federal reporting. And then the coordinating board also reports on a weekly basis the cash status of these funds to the comptroller. So there's various levels and degrees of reporting that we have to complete.
But that doesn't answer the question of what happens after 2 years.
Well, that's a sustainment question, and the way the legislature appropriated these funds, basically they're using ARA dollars to replace general revenue with these institutions. So for the most part, these funds are being used to pay salaries, utilities, purchase equipment over the period of time, so the impact is really near-term rather than far-term. There are some special item projects under Section 25 of Article 12 that actually were project-oriented and infused money into special projects like the River Systems Monitoring Project at Texas State University. I think Texas A&M University, Texarkana, has a downward expansion program where they're starting freshman and sophomore programs in 2010. So there are some programs that these funds are initially giving a boost to, if you will, to start them off. But beyond August of 2011, there's no sustainability that we can really put our arms around.
And Joe, there's, and of course, we didn't have a choice in this. I mean, basically, the legislature decided where these funds were going to come from, because if you look, there's roughly all the incentive funds that we've historically done. $80 million is coming out of our funds. There's $147 million that historically has been part of the formula that's coming out of the ARA funds. And that's a concern that we've expressed. Mark and I and several of us have expressed about as we come up to the next session and looking at these, what's normally been in the formula but now has been at another source, that we're just really making efforts to keep that on the radar screens of everybody and with the LBB, as we approach the next session. So it's a great question. The answer is yes, and we're really trying to keep our eyes and focus on it as we head into the next session.
Well, I sure think we need to, because I'm not used to seeing the government give anything away unless there's a lot of strings attached to it.
You're right. Could I get a little bit of a better understanding of how this all is working? And I understand there's probably a pool of money that's been appropriated from the feds to the state of Texas, and then we've been entrusted into ascertaining how this money is being distributed. Is that a fair assessment of how this is?
No, We didn't make any decisions on how to distribute it. The legislature did that.
Okay, but
All we're doing is distributing the money based on federal guidelines and state guidelines, and that's why we had to have an application process to make sure we followed all those guidelines. But
is this,
we were told exactly how much would be appropriated to each institution.
okay, so they're not really out here competing for these dollars based on the best proposals that can be presented forward?
No, these were not competitive applications by any means. It was a collection of information and so forth so that we could manage these programs consistently and just to be able to build our own records to start the grant management process.
So each institution has been pre-approved for X number of dollars, and the only thing they have to do is apply for it, and then our job is to cut the check and send it to them.
And monitor.
Dr. Cole, that's a very good question. It has come up in several of our presentations because of the word of the use of the word application. And maybe we should have clarified that. The application is not where we make judgment of whether they will get the funds or not, or whether their use of the funds is a good use or not. That was determined, as Mark said, by the legislature when they appropriated the exact amount and the purpose to each institution. When we say application, we use the word application to ensure that they sign off on all the assurances, the certifications, all the terms and conditions, that they know what reports that they have to submit and so forth.
So it's more of a compliance?
It's more of a compliance application than a...
Is the use of the money well-defined, or is it pretty flexible in terms of how these institutions can utilize these funds?
It's very flexible. We've had guidance from the Department of Education and concurrence from the Governor's Office that the intent here was a broad use by these institutions for funds, except for the Section 25 dollars, which were allocated for special item projects and so forth. So,
Section 25, Article 12, which will allow certain institutions to use the money for specific projects.
Yes.
Like what's happening in Texarkana.
Yes.
Mr. Golden, the sheet that, the spreadsheet that was handed out, the colored columns, basically, the dark columns,
I see that.
have the funds that were appropriated by the legislature broken out. And you can see that there's formula funding, incentive funding, and then those special items, 1, 2, and 3, if an institution has more than one, that's why we have 3 columns, because there's some institutions that have more than one special item project in Section 25. So those special projects are that's $111 million that's in Section 25. They were appropriated special item funding.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on the RO report? If not, we'll move into financial reporting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dan and Mark. I appreciate that. The third part of my report is the financial report, which is the quarterly report that was sent to you about 2 weeks ago with the board materials. This is a financial report that we consider, even at this point, a work in progress. We continue to work to make changes to the information and to the format. We work very closely with your AOC chair and get her guidance and her a lot of advice on what would be meaningful and how best to present this information. But we feel that this, even though it's a high-level report, it tracks the funds, it tracks the sources of funds. I know as a CFO, as your CFO, that it is a very useful report. I hope that that you will concur with me when you have a chance to look into detail. I would be glad to, either Dan or I would be glad to answer any questions that you may have specific to the report. But one thing I do want to briefly call your attention, well, a couple of things that I'd like to call your attention to is on page 6 and 7, we list and we detail the transfers and the adjustments that we've made this fiscal year to our budget. Most of these transfers are to allow or to provide you with adjustments that we've made to the carryover funds, where we estimated some carryover funds when we did the budget back in July. As we get into the new biennium, we find out that some of those have to be adjusted to actuals, and that's reflected on those 2 pages of your report. The other major part of the adjustment is you will see that we've added the 40 some odd million dollars in incentive funds that was not appropriated until the Article 12 adjustment came in for ARA funds, for incentive funds. So those adjustments are made for those 2 purposes. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that as a standing part of the report, your chair has asked that we include a report on ARA, which is on there. You see very little activity because we are just now pushing the money out the door. But as the activity increases, so will that information be reflected.
That's on page 10?
And that's on page
Okay.
10 of your
10.
report, that's right. And then the other one, which is also, you just heard a presentation on the loan program. We also will provide you with quarterly information on our loan program as part of our report. Again, I don't intend to go over any of this in detail, but I'm prepared, both Dan and I are prepared to answer any questions that you may have on the financial report.
Well, let me just go over a couple of things. When I got to page 6 and 7, and you see the title is adjustments, and you see 2 pages worth, you start asking a lot of questions. Why do we have so many adjustments? But it is, in fact, primarily due to the UB carry forward. So I think it would be helpful to make that clear on these schedules going forward, because there's a difference in my mind between a UB carry forward and, another type of adjustment or reclass.
And we've already discussed this
Yeah,
with staff,
okay.
and we are taking steps to make sure that that's clear next time.
Okay. On page 10, which is the ARA funds, let's see. About in the middle section there, ARA administration, 84,397, that's 0.
Yes, I can explain that.
Yeah, how's that
Be glad to. Including the $723 million that's appropriated in ARA funds, there is an appropriation of $10 million made to the governor for administration of the funds.
And that's a couple lines down at
Right.
ARA Rider 29, Section 12, admin costs at $10 million.
Rider 29. In fact, that Rider 29 is really $23 million split up, and $13 million that goes to TCEQ for the PERP fund, and then $10 million to the governor for administration. The governor is going to appropriate that $10 million between 4 agencies, themselves, the coordinating board, TEA, and the Comptroller of Public Accounts for the administration of the funds. We have just yesterday signed an MOU that is making its way through those 4 agencies for those funds to be redistributed back to each one of us, and our share will be approximately $1.7 million for the 2 years of the biennium. Once we start tracking those monies, we will show those expenditures here.
Is that to cover all program costs?
For the 1.7 is for
Yeah.
for the coordinating board's cost of administration.
Do we have any feel today for whether that's a comfortable number for us?
Barring any unforeseen.
I said today.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I think we do have a
Okay.
pretty good feel. We have run through several iterations of a budget, of how to budget that money, and we think that it will cover us through the end of our responsibility of administering the funds.
And so the other 8.3 is shared between the TEA, the governor's office, and who else?
The controller. And theirs mainly goes for the building of a reporting system for the so-called 1512 reports that are due every month, I guess, to the controller, and every quarter to the feds. But they are the ones that collect that information.
And then 11 and 12 is loan information that ties in nicely to the slide presentation we had earlier.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Alonso on the financial report? Or for
Madam Chair?
Mr. Weaver?
On page 7, on the adjustment items, the be on time. Budget adjustment of 18 million, was that the set-asides that didn't get spent?
Yes, and that is one of the carryovers. It had been estimated at less than that, and this is the actual amount of the set-aside. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, there was a large amount that was estimated, and this is on top of the large amount that was estimated. This is because we didn't originate any new Beyond Time awards in '08 and '09.
And we were instructed not to, correct?
Yes.
That was the guidance that we were given.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted a quick explanation of, the encumbrances are a pretty high percentage of the total fiscal year-to-date number, and the total fiscal year-to-date is much more than the percentage of the year that's gone by. Curious what our policy is, particularly as regards salaries and professional fees, because that's the bulk of the encumbrances that are beyond the percentage that the year is complete, if you will.
We encumber salaries for all field positions for the full year, Fred, so that accounts for that.
So from day one of the fiscal year, that's considered an encumbrance?
It's an encumbrance, right.
For
salaries.
filled
For
positions,
filled positions.
not authorized.
Not authorized.
Okay.
We do not encumber vacancies. And the rest of it is, as we issue contracts, not in salaries, obviously, but in the other categories, we encumber the funds when we have an actual contract that has been approved by the board and signed by both ends. By both parties.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to get a clarification on page 7, where it states the Physician Education Loan Repayment Program. That's, I understand that to be $29,000 in parentheses. Right under that, it's the Dental Education Loan Repayment Program. I think that is monies that that was appropriated by the legislature for the coordinating board to distribute to those individuals that were going into manpower shortage areas. Could someone, Terrell, maybe you could explain to me how much of that money's been distributed? I know we're in the first year of that. And why is that 29,000 in parentheses? That means that it hasn't been distributed, or is that money that hasn't left, or are we in the hole there? Or what does that make some sense out of that for me?
And
I know that we've been in charge. Listen, the coordinating board has been asked to implement that program. And
this
distribute that money.
29,000 is just a...
Is that operational cost to get this off the
It's
ground?
making true what the estimates were when we issued the budget in July versus what the actual figures were when the actual dollars were realized at August 31st of 2009. So when the budgets are made, the LBB makes estimates on how much UB we're expecting to have. That 29,000 is 29,000 we're adjusting down so that the LBB bus estimate was overstated by 29,000. This is just a truing up of the fiscal year imbalance.
So they overprojected what the actual figure would be,
and I think
we've adjusted it down 29,000.
The chair kind of at the outset was most of these are truing up numbers based on what the LBB's estimates were, which is what you approved the budget for in July.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that before we move into the 5% reduction? I just want to make a final comment. I want to give credit where credit is due, and while I did in fact participate in the input of this document from the beginning, I want to point out that Board Member Hinton and Board Member Phillips were also an integral part of that process, and ultimately input was obtained from all the board members. So you're right, Dr. Alonso, this continues to be somewhat of a fluid document, but y'all just did a terrific job on this. I think it looks great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second part of my financial report is, as I indicated, is to bring you up to date on where we are with the mandate or the request by the state leadership on the 5% reduction. We have been anticipating this. We didn't know how much, and we didn't know when it was going to be coming, but we pretty much had we felt pretty sure that it was going to be coming sometime during the fiscal year. About 2 weeks ago, we received a letter, the official letter, from the leadership asking all state agencies to identify 5% of our general revenue and what they call general revenue dedicated for reductions in the biennium. 5% of our 2010, 2011 GR and GR dedicated biannual appropriation. As I said, this was not a surprise, especially given the adjusted projections that the comptroller has made on tax revenues and the lagging of the tax revenues that the state is seeing. In meeting with the commissioner early on in this process, he asked us to let 3 guiding principles guide us as we identify these reductions. Number 1, he asked us to identify reductions in the area of the agency that will cause the least damage to students and to our Closing the Gaps initiatives. Number 2, he asked us to preserve the strengths of the agency. In other words, to look at those areas where we are really strong and to the extent possible, preserve them. And number 3, as a corollary, he says, look at those areas that are perhaps less successful, either through evaluation of the programs or as a possibility of streamlining some of those areas and make the reductions in those areas. So given that general guidance from the commissioner, Dr. Gardner, Linda Battles, and I are leading the effort and working very closely with the support of the business office and working with the assistant commissioners to come up with the reductions to the 10-11 budget. I failed to mention that the flexibility was given to us by the leadership that we can take the cuts anytime during the biennium. In other words, we don't have to take them out equally in 10 or 11, or we can take them out all out of 10 or all out of 11. Obviously, it's harder to take them out of 10 because we're halfway into the year already. But we at least have that flexibility. We met with the assistant commissioners once already, the team of Linda and David and I. We've asked them to come back with preliminary figures. I believe the due date is today. Linda will be here till midnight to collect those figures. And so we will then, the 3 of us will go through the preliminary figures that come back. We will scrub the numbers, ask questions, perhaps make adjustments, ask for more. We don't know. We haven't seen them yet. And then we will present our recommendations to the commissioner. He has asked us for a recommendation by February the 5th, which is a week from this coming Friday, to give us about a week for him to ask his questions and make his adjustments and communicate with the board as to where we're going to be able to meet the deadline of February the 15th, which is the due date that we have to submit our plan. So needless to say, it's not a surprise, but nonetheless, it's a challenge. And I don't think that we are alone. I keep reading in the paper that all the other agencies and institutions are going through some very challenging times in trying to come up with a 5% reduction. So that's where we are. We're working hard, and we will come up with the best plan that we can, keeping those 3 guiding principles that the commissioner gave us as we present our recommendations to him. Be glad to answer any questions on that initiative.
First of all, thank you for including closing the gaps in your point number 1. I think that's critical, and it's pleasing to hear that. Does this require some sort of committee vote or board vote, or how?
No, it's
okay. It's just procedure.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Any
We will, I will say, Madam Chair, that those numbers will be reviewed with the chair and vice chair and secretary of the board before we finalize.
Yeah, definitely. That's why he's allowed that week in there. So
Right.
for that.
Which we'll be doing subsequent to his review.
Terrific. Any other questions?
Arturo, just out of curiosity, I think I know the answer to this, but have any of the institutions who are under the same mandate turned to us for any consulting advice or help on where they might find some of their 5%?
I have not received any word from them, Fred. Maybe maybe McGregor or somebody up there that works closely with them, but I have not received. Obviously, some of this will affect them, some of the funds that are trustee to us that go to the institutions, but
Right.
I have not received any word from them.
Well, and of course, my concern is not that some savings would be double counted, although that, I guess that needs to be monitored, but I just, what specifically came to mind was McGregor's and his department's recent focus on low-performing, low-productive programs, and how much might that save those, if those programs with 3 students here and 2 students there were eliminated. But I know we have our own hands full coming up with our own 5%, but
We would be glad to assist in any way we can or provide guidance if we are asked.
yeah, it's the getting asked is the tricky part.
Exactly. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, there being none, we will move on to Agenda Item 4A, consideration of approval of requests for qualifications, requests for proposals, or similar requests for the purchase of services as following. This one is regarding the ARA program. Dr. Alonso.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. As you just heard from the presentation, one of the requirements that we have as a prime recipient of the ARA funds is that in fact, it's one of our main requirements, is that we are to ensure compliance with all the rules and regulations and federal guidelines that come attached to these funds. And it is our responsibility to make sure that the institutions, that not only do we get the money to the institutions, but that they are spending that money and accounting for that money in complete compliance with those rules and regulations. We believe that it is the most efficient and effective way of ensuring compliance is to outsource what is known in federal terms as the subrecipient monitoring, as opposed to staffing up for that effort. We're in the process of developing an RFP, a request for proposal, that if the committee grants the permission, that we want to put out in the street and solicit bids from, or proposals from qualified firms that would carry this out for us. Subrecipient monitoring is a very important part of this compliance. In my estimation, and based on many years' experience with federal funds, one of the things that gets most prime recipients in trouble is a lack of subrecipient monitoring. And so we are taking this very seriously. We think that this is the way to go. We would like to put this out on the street, and so we come before this committee and respectfully request authority to go out on an RFP.
Questions?
Move approval.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second?
I just have a comment. Again, this is permission to submit. Walk us a little bit through the timeline of the actual awarding of the proposal.
Our plans are, if the approval is granted today, that we will get the RFP out on the street early part of February, first week or so of February, leave it on the street about 30 to 45 days, take another reasonable amount of time to evaluate the proposals and come back to, in accordance with Rule 1.16, come back to the chair, vice chair, and chair of the AOC committee for approval of a contract to have somebody ready to go about mid to late April to start the subrecipient monitoring.
Will there be a maximum amount stated on this RFP?
We will not.
This will be funded out of, does that come out of the administration budget?
It comes out of the administration budget, and we have
1.7.
budgeted for that, that comes from the governor's office.
At 1.7.
Part of the
million
1.7,
dollars.
yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay, we have a motion.
Yeah, I make the motion to go forward.
Okay, I think we had a
we
motion
have
from
already-
Heldenfels and a second from...
Well, I seconded it.
Okay.
I thought you were starting over.
All in
Before
fa-
we go any further, I've got to get this off my chest. I'm very uncomfortable with what happens in 2 years. on these funds. I have absolute trust that you folks will manage it properly. But think about what's going to be going on 2 years from now. Obama is going to be facing a big challenge, and that's re-election. And I cannot help but believe that Axelrod or some of his henchmen are going to be around here wanting to get something out of the state of Texas because he didn't carry it the first go-round. Now, that's just my humble opinion, but that gnaws at me. And I don't think that I'd be being just with all of you folks if I just tucked it in and went away and forgot about it. But I do think, and we're already talking about having to cut back, the governor's asking us to cut back, and we're going to be spending a lot of this money. I don't know how vulnerable we're going to be 2 years from now and how all this works. But at any rate, you can just set it aside as one of the musings of Joe, and we'll go on.
Well,
But that worries me.
all right, and I think one of the nice things about this action item is that this helps, in fact, strengthen our process over our
That's right.
responsibilities with this program.
My point is,
Yeah.
we need to cover our backside
Yeah.
very carefully as
Yeah.
we go forward over these next 2 years.
Joe, and I see that recommendation as being a risk mitigation tactic,
Yeah.
by far. So I applaud you guys for looking at that.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is number 4B, consideration of approval of a 10-year lease with 1200 Anderson Partners for the lease of facilities at this location, 1200 East Anderson Lane. Dr. Alonso.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dr. Arturo today for
that's-
some reason.
It's okay. As they say, I've been called a lot worse.
Okay.
As most of you know, we have been working on this process of finding a suitable space for the coordinating board for the period after June 30th of this year. Our present lease expires on June 30th of 2010. We started this process well over a year ago, working with the Texas Facilities Commission and with a third-party vendor, as they call them over at the state level, the firm of C.B. Richard Ellis, who, by the way, we have representatives from that firm here with us today to answer any questions or to provide any information that the committee may need for this item. CBRE led us through the complexity of identifying potential sites and evaluating the bids that we received. We looked at, and I'm not going to go through the whole process, but we looked at some 10 to 12 buildings. We have been in intense negotiations. They were very competitive with the current building. Current landlord coming up with the best offer, and he has put an offer of $1,780 on the table, a square foot for a full service lease for the next 10 years. This is a flat rate for 10 years. In other words, there is no increase to that rate except for the CPI that is allowed by state leasing laws. But other than the CPI increases that they may come in with, the $1,780 is for the full 10 years. That is, as I understand, almost unheard of. We also have, this is also a decrease from our current rate, which again, I think it's really almost unheard of on renewals. Maybe not on new leases, but certainly on renewals. Our current budget for facilities and facilities-related expenditures is $1.7 million a year, and what we are proposing to enter into will cost us right under $1.5 million, $1,498,000 per year to be exact. So we're looking at a savings from our budget of approximately $265,000 per year that we can save if our budget remains flat. And that's a big if, of course, but let's only hope that we are. We are convinced that this will be a good deal for the coordinating board. Like I said, we have Mr. Charles Dixon and Mr. Nate Strickland from CBRE, who have been very, very instrumental in getting us to where we are, to respond to any questions but we would respectfully request your approval to go forth with the getting the lease executed for the new space.
May I ask a question? Do we have any options for renewal beyond the 10 years, or is it 10 years and drop dead?
I think this is a 10-year lease without any options, Joe.
Okay.
It appears to me that y'all have negotiated with them some significant improvements in the facility, which I think is significant.
That is correct,
Worthwhile.
and I'm sorry I didn't mention that, but we did put a handout at your places that where he came forth and put his deal on the table. There are significant amount of improvements that he will make to this building. I believe the per square footage of improvements that he is proposing is around $25 a square foot, or it comes out to about $25 a square foot. So we expect that we will get a significantly improved building.
Larger also.
Well, it's the same building, I mean, we'll pay for less because he's going to let us have the whole building, that's right.
Paying for $63,000, and we're going to have the building for $66.
Occupy the whole building.
87 and 77.
Yeah, that's right. The other issue is, Dr. Alonzo, I'd like you to just comment on is what we have asked you and Mr. France to do in terms of developing a timeline for meeting the improvement schedule that we've talked about, which we think is critically important as we work with landlords. So we've set out our expectations, and I don't know how we want to, approve this, Madam Chair, but I think it's important that I think Mr. Heldenfels has already drafted out some proposed language.
Mr. Franz has passed the note along.
Good. So if that's the case, why don't you make the motion, and I'll save my breath.
I did want to, just a couple of clarifications. It's a turnkey, it's referred to as a turnkey finish out here on the tenant improvements per the revised building block plan. So these 16 bullet points are total, those are in, these are repairs or services that are in addition to the tenant finish improvements?
I believe they are. Charles or Nate, please.
These are in addition to the improvements that are based upon the agency program, the agency specifications, yes.
So it's, we're not just getting these 16 bullet points. The space is going to be refinished and made more efficient as well as upgraded and updated.
Correct. The boardroom will be relocated to the first floor. A lot of reconfiguration work based upon the agency specifications and program that was designed by Arturo and his team and the Facilities Commission, and then the improvements that are bulleted in that proposal will be in addition to that work.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify that, make that clear. Unless anybody else has any other questions about the proposal.
I have one quick question. Will they also be responsible for who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of the building should other problems develop during this 10-year period? Air conditioners go out. Who fixes those?
The landlord.
Landlord, okay.
In fact, one of those bullet points, Dennis, is that the landlord shall employ an on-site maintenance.
I saw that.
That has been an issue
I
historically.
thought that was very significant. Certainly, I don't like maintenance
All
work.
right, may I have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I'll move that we approve this recommendation subject to acceptable lease language and terms and an acceptable timeline for completion of the renovations, repairs, maintenance, and improvements.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Charles,
Thank you.
appreciate
Next
it.
item on the agenda is item 4C, consideration of amending the current contract with Cyber Ficent Technologies, Inc. Dr. Alonzo, will you please introduce our next presenter?
Yes, Darla Fent, our Assistant Commissioner for IT, was going to be here, had to go downtown for a meeting at the DIR. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ruben Estrada from our IT department, who will give us the background on the request that we're making. This is a contract that we entered into for for our IT operations, and I would let Ruben guide us through that, and then we'll answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Dr. Alonso. Madam Chair and fellow committee members, I'd like a consideration for amending a deliverables-based contract with Cyberfishing Technologies that we initially agreed to for $99,000. I'm asking your consideration to amend that to a maximum of $180,000 to allow us to proceed with the database modeler administrator components, which are phased deliverables within the State Longitudinal Data Systems Grant Project. And if I may, I'd like to give you a little bit of background. So in July of 2009, TEA received a federal grant to proceed with the State Longitudinal Data Systems Project. It's a federal funded project. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board was a subrecipient of that grant for approximately $1.1 million. And the goal of the project is to expand our data collection statewide to include student and course level data from the K through 20 system. And so from the coordinating board perspective, my role as project manager is to make sure that we meet the project schedule as dictated to us by TEA and the Department of Ed on the federal side. And so we secured a hub contract with one of our hub vendors as part of an existing deliverables-based contract that the coordinating board has established through the Department of Information Resources to secure our resource that we have with this existing cyberfishing agreement, which allowed us to execute 2 discrete tasks that are part of the project, one of which was design a web-based application and also to design security controls for that website. The request for amending would allow us to enter into a different phase of the grant project sometime approximately late next year, which would allow us to be able to conduct 2 discrete tasks that are part of the overall project success.
And I believe the funds for this increase are in the grant.
Yes, that's correct, Dr. Alonso. The overall $1.1 million that we have with TEA is already part of the FY10 budget, and so we would simply be drawing down those funds as per the TEAS account that we have set up with TEA.
Okay. Any questions? I tell you, it's always nice to hear about opportunities by this agency for hub vendors, so thank you for that bit of information. May I have a motion?
I make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item of business is 4C number 2, consideration of approving a contract with MCII LLC to purchase the Laserfish electronic documents records management software.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to call on Casey Kennedy to present this item for your consideration.
Dr. Alonso, Madam Chair and fellow committee members, thank you for having me. We currently have an imaging system in place for our loan program operations department. That imaging system we've had since the late 90s. This summer our vendor told us that by the end of this year, that's December 31st of 2010, that their support for that system is going to end. Then earlier this fall we went with that vendor. They provided us an upgraded product. We went ahead and tested that product with the stakeholders that we had here in-house. Unfortunately, we found that there were some substantial issues with that product with the vendor that we currently are using. We used those same stakeholders and went out and looked at the different products that were available, the imaging products that were available. Those stakeholders evaluated their requirements, and what they've come up with is Laserfish. Laserfish is a industry imaging system that will allow us to continue doing the imaging process that we do. The other thing that the group considered was the agency-wide solution. A lot of the stuff that we see around the agency is a lot of paper shuffling going on, and the group was set out to identify a solution that will let us leverage some of that imaging efficiency so that we're not shuffling paper around, so that you can find documents very quickly and very easily. We already have this on our planned procurement schedule with the Department of Information Resources. We've got this budgeted in the 2010 operating budget already. And then what our general game plan is that once you approve this item, we can bring the vendor on board
and they'll walk us through the planning phases, and then we'll roll out our initial stakeholders, which is our loan program operations, and then our business services group, and then from there, we would go across the agency so that we could leverage that efficiency. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions? May I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second from Agrawal. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is 4.3, consideration of approving an interagency contract between Coordinating Board and other state agencies. Welcome back, Mr. Weaver.
I'll be very brief. This is a trifecta interagency agreement between Health and Human Services Commission and the Department of State Health Services. This operationalizes the Children's Medicaid Loan Repayment Program. The funds are going to be coming from Health and Human Services Commission. This interagency agreement, from a coordinating board standpoint, facilitates the transfer of those funds so that we can operate the loan repayment portion of that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, and we do have somebody from Health and Human Services if somebody has more detailed questions that they would like to.
Questions? Have a motion?
Who's here from Health and Human Services? Are they in the audience?
Yes, sir. Olga Rodriguez.
Could I see her? Stan, thank you. No, you don't have to come up. I just want to see who you are. Thank you. I'll talk to you after the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
May I have a motion?
I was out. I don't know what we're making a motion for.
I'm sorry, I will back up. It's
Okay.
Agenda item 4C3, the consideration of approving the interagency contract between the Coordinating Board, the Texas Department of State Health Services, and Texas Health and Human Services Commission.
Okay, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. We're now moving into the auditing section of the agenda. That brings us to agenda item 5A. Oh, wait, 5A, sorry, we took out of order. And we have finished with that. We will move on to, good afternoon, Mr. Tegby. Move on to agenda item 5B, discussion of updates on external audits. I believe we have a big packet
Yes, ma'am.
mailed to us.
Yeah, you do
Thank
have a big package, and I should also apologize for the mix-up that happened last weekend, and I promise it will not happen again. Yes. On the external audit updates, we have provided you with the 5 audit reports that we were conducted by external agencies, and we have read all the reports, and I can assure you that they did not contain, I don't think they could contain anything that significant deficiencies, and some of the issues we had addressed in some of our audits, and we do not have anything that we need to be concerned about, and I know that management have started on implementing some of the audit recommendations in all those audits.
Questions?
Tony, under 5B, I just had I appreciated the summary here of the 5 external audits. That was very helpful. And I had 2 questions. And the third bullet point under 4 was dealing with the post-payment audit by the comptroller. The third bullet point says 2 out of the 201 payroll transactions audited didn't have documentation, needed to verify, et cetera. It says, I think this is just a typo or a correction, it says resulting in a 0.01% payment error. Is that percentage supposed to be the error rate, the number of transactions, or the actual dollar amount? In other words, should it be 1% rather than 0.01%?
I think it's 0.01% from the report, all the errors were very insignificant. So I think that.
I was just doing the math on 2 out of 201. That's why I asked. I didn't know if it was a typo or if it was referring to dollar figure that's not on here. The figures on here are the actual number of payroll transactions. Does that make sense?
Fred, I think it's on the dollar figure that's not on here.
It's on.
Okay.
The Comptroller's Office does a lot of what they call extrapolation on their sample size.
Okay.
And that's not on here, but that's what it is.
In fact, I just look at the report on page 2. It was 0.01%.
Okay. That's coming from Comptroller's own report is using that figure, so we think they're
Yes,
referring
sir.
to the dollars. Okay. I'll make that note. Then in number 5, just a quick question about the second sentence. This was the audit done by the Internal Department of UTD, and it says the report concluded that it appeared that the ERC, had made significant compliance in improving with ERC requirement. Remind me, what does ERC stand for, and are we talking about, I think this was this, I thought it was the school project that was being audited.
This is the funds that came to us about 3 years ago, for the educational research centers. And I believe we have one with A&M, one with UT.
And one with Texas A&M and UTD.
And this is a security audit of securing the data.
So we're saying that the Education Research Center has made significant progress in improving compliance with their own requirement or with ERC requirements laid down by us?
The ERC requirements laid down by us in the agreement, in the contract.
All right. So that is correctly worded?
Yes.
Okay.
I had a question about the ERCs as well. If we look at the internal audit work plan, there's 240 hours budgeted, 80 hours each for 3 of the education research centers, A&M, UT Austin, and UT Dallas. Does this report allow us, in other words, are you still going forward with the audit of UT Dallas, or does this report cover the work that you were going to do in fiscal year 2010?
This report covers anything that we do plan to do, so we will not be going back to do an audit of UTD.
So you can shift those 80 hours?
Exactly. We will shift that 80 hours to other projects. And as you had advised us the last time, we are in the process of shifting that audit to the institutionals in Tatana audit shops, so that what will happen after they conducted their audit, they will just send us the report, and then we will share them with the management and then bring them to you.
So the Texas A&M and the UT Austin will also be shifted to their internal audit?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. The other question I had, when I saw, gosh, now I need to find everything here. Okay. When I saw the state auditor's report on audit of student financial aid programs, and one of the institutions that was audited was Texas Women's University, but I remember that I thought we had done some work on that last quarter. Is this a duplication of efforts, what the work that we audited and now the work that the SAO is doing at TWU?
It is not a duplication of effort, because when we went there, we did financial audit and also the enrollment audit. So they only did a financial aid audit. and our testing in some area did overlap, but we had done that audit before they chose to go to that school.
So there might have been some overlap, though, on the financial aid piece?
Yes.
I guess my
I
big
think
global question is how closely are we working with SAO? Because it seems like, any overlap should be avoided so everyone's time is maximized and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we do work with the State Auditor's Office. In fact, before when I did this audit, we share with them our audit work papers and the work plan, but we do not have any control as to the schools that they do choose to do an audit.
Can we access a copy of their 2010 plan to look at the institutions that they're targeting for the financial aid work?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we'll be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions on this? This is a informational item only, no action required. Any other questions? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to agenda item 5C, discussion of the status of internal audit work plan for fiscal year 2010.
We have provided with a brief summary of the internal audit activities covering the period of September 1 to the December 31st, 2009. And most of the audit that we started are still in progress, and our plan is to bring you the audit report at the April board meeting. We do have the breakdown of all the hours on the update of the work plan.
Questions on the internal audit work plan? I had a question on the ARA funds. I haven't seen activity in that particular category yet. What can we expect there?
Yeah. Our plan is to allow the ARA group to get established, and we do plan to start an audit there in the month of February.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, I'm trying to remember where I read this. But it seems like what we're estimating it's going to take us to do some of these specific hours we're allocating, and then what the actuals, that there's gaps. I mean, to the plus and to the minus. I'm trying to remember exactly where I read this, but find it here in a minute. But I think like we had Prairie View, originally 400 hours were budgeted for this project. We've already incurred 450 hours. I mean, that's a 13% overrun. There's somewhere else I think I read where we were lower. If you look at total, I guess my question is, do we have a good enough handle on really projecting hours that are required, or are those just unusual aberrations that we're seeing in these numbers?
I think we do have a pretty good grasp on the hours this year. The issues that we came across during the audit of Prairie View was that our statistical modeling, we had to tweak it because from the information that we obtained from our statistician, we had to increase our number of testing in order for us to be able to extrapolate. So that was why we had to exceed that hours.
I mean, here's another example. College of the Mainland, 400 hours, we incurred 522 hours. I'm finally finding my notes here. I mean, again, all I want to do is, I want to make sure that we've got the necessary resources to do the scope of work that we're charged to do with in terms of these audits. And so, you know, that alone right there is a 10, 20, what's that, 25, 30% increase in hours. So, again, it's not really a question so much, Tony, as it is a concern of, as we're beginning to put the audit plan together, the number of hours we've got, you know, do we just have a good enough handle on the scope of what we're being asked to do in terms of those audits? And do we have the necessary resources to carry it out, Madam Chair? So,
I think at the end of this year, we will be able to have a much more better handle on the hours. At that time, we will have had a lot of experience in auditing the institutions that we have to audit.
I was just going to follow up on Whit's comments that, you know, another way to look at your question, Whit, and pose to Tony, is that in the area of institutional audits, when you also throw in the Tony's estimated additional hours needed to complete College of the Mainland, Tarrant County College, and Prairie View, we've used up or encumbered, if you will, 50% of the hours with a third of the year. At the point of this report, with about a third of the year gone by, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 institutions left on the plan. So the question is, you know, we're using those institutional audit hours at a more rapid rate. On the other hand, the agency operation hours are either because we haven't started a lot of those audits, or they've taken less time, with the exception of one that was not budgeted, or under. So are we going to be able to borrow from Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, or other audits that we'd like to do going to end up having to be deferred?
I think what will happen is we may have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul, but when we come back and report to you at the end of April, we will have a much more better need to adjust and move hours around, because since our statistician has recommended that when we go out to the institutions, the minimum amount that we will have to test should not be less than 100. So that in itself means that when we go out, instead of spending 2 days, we will have to spend at least 3 days. So with that, when we bring those 3 audits in April, we'll be able to know hours that we will have to shift around.
We understand that being an auditor, internal or external, is a little bit like being a remodeling contractor. You don't always know what you're going to find that has to be dealt with. So the only other minor request, Madam Chairman, is when you update this next time, it would be helpful to have subtotals for actual hours by category as well as at the bottom of the whole plan.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and also it would help if you let us know which audits are fully complete. You can make that easy, just put a capital C somewhere for complete. But it's hard to know if we're still going to be accumulating hours in these categories. My final comment is, it looks like the human resources audit has started. I say that because the hours are into it, not quite halfway. But my question is, and I don't know the answer here, I'm just asking, is it more efficient to perhaps focus on doing all of the institutional audit work first, getting that out of the way? It would seem that the work programs and the testing, for the most part, is the same.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can just boom, 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 go through all the institutions and finish that category? Or is that not the most efficient way to approach this plan?
I agree with you that that is the most efficient way of doing it, and that is why when we come in April, we should be able to deliver three or four reports on institutional audit. So after that, in fact, we do have one or two more that we will do in a February or March. So when we get those out of the way, then we will be able to focus on the agency operations.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Tegby on this item? This is a information item only. No action required. There being no questions, we will then move on to agenda item 5D, consideration of approval of changes to the internal audit charter.
We have submitted this item in order to bring our charter in line with the standards, and also to align our charter with the practice at the agency. There are two areas that we've identified, and that is the establishment of the internal auditing function, and also those standards in the area of independence and objectivity, governance, risk management, and the quality assurance program. Yeah, we do have a new edition of the charter that is being passed around. This is because we did make some changes at the last minute, and she has those changes they are on the page 1 of the new charter, and well, page 1, the changes that we made there, it's in the second paragraph under the section for the establishment. We just tweak it to actually reflect what is happening here, and that is that the agency governing board shall appoint director of internal audit, and upon consultation with the commissioner, the director of internal audit shall employ additional professional and support staff necessary to implement an effective audit program of internal auditing. And the other changes are on page 6 of 8, and they are under the section for reporting. And the changes there under reporting, we changed the third sentence in the first paragraph.
I think the changes in the reporting section were to clarify the reporting, which now throughout generally reads, you shall provide certain deliverables to the agency ops committee and as well as the board members. And that's been made consistent.
Very clear.
This is an action item before I ask for a motion. I just have a question or comment. We are in process of the peer review. It's my understanding that as a part of their process, they have reviewed these changes, these proposed changes.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that team in agreement with the changes presented today? Were there any additional items
No.
to consider?
They're in agreement with everything.
And they meet all required standards?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on this item? Have a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the Agency Operations Committee agenda. Are there any additional comments or questions? There being none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
It's going pretty well.